Okay.
But what I'm thinking about is that you essentially become the resident DJ at Buddy's then, right? I mean,
yes.
This is where we are, right?
Right, it's 79.
But now you get a record pool membership by then?
They were so bitchy and nasty to me, they wouldn't let me in the pool.
They still wouldn't let you in.
And I would tell them, you know, look, you're giving 20 people here. There were 75 members, I think, because I watched everybody go in and out. And I was sitting in Kenmore Square. Oh, I was getting pissed. And I walked in and I said, you know, you got 20 people I saw that don't have a job. Yeah. And you're giving them records. Now, I know the rule was supposed to be, you know, you could get records for 3 months, and then if you didn't have a job in those 3 months, you're out of the pool. Okay. And, you know, and I went up and I told Carol and George this, and, you know, I became known as Addie Attitude, a nasty bitch. Well, at the same time, it just so happened that Cosmo Wyatt, Calvin Wyatt, who's a preacher now in New York, he opened the New England DJ record pool, okay? And it was mostly urban, black DJs, straight a lot, and the only gay guy in there, well, there was two, but the one in Boston that played was David Pellegrino, and his number was 19. Okay, and they think they had 50 members trying to get 75 because they were competing with Boston Record Pool, of course. So I told David what happened, and he was going, "Oh, that's bullshit here." He says, hey, "Come on over here to the New England DJ." He said, "They're kind of funky, you know, but they're really all nice people, you know." And he said, "They'll be glad to have you." So I went over there because, you know, they wouldn't let me in the pool, and they just gave me misery, and finally let me in, and it was I didn't go to a meeting because they never told me about it. It's just all shady bullshit, you know. So I went into Cosmo's pool, and it was located right upstairs from Chaps on the 6th floor. He came right out from behind his desk. "Oh, Paul, I'm so glad to meet you," you know, because I had had buddies for a while. He's going a few months, and it was a big stink, you know. So he immediately, here's your box of records. Your number's 4 in the pool, okay? And not only that, we're going to make you a Billboard reporter also. And I'm like, yeah, well, whatever, you know. Okay. So I was just over the hill, you know, with what I had. You know, finally I got in a pool. I was getting the same promo demo shit as everybody else.
And the higher the number you were in the pool, if there were only 10 copies of a record, you were one of the first 10 to get it.
Exactly. Yeah. And when the new wave came in around 1980, 81, you know, those select DJs, they would only send maybe 25 copies of those records. And those DJs that wanted to play New Wave or were playing New Wave would get first access to those. But yes, you're right. I mean, if only a few things came in, it depended on your position and where you were working. I mean, Cosmo put the records out there to get the best reaction because we had to do feedback on everything that we got from the pool, good or bad. We had to say, you know, it was good. You know, how was the dance floor response? Do you think it needs a remix? You know, there was like 4 or 5 questions we had to answer about each record.
I feel like that sort of side of DJing's kind of disappeared, right? Like, not record pools, they're still around, but nobody requires feedback anymore. I mean, the labels don't seem to have a real interest in maybe necessarily how, I mean, maybe they do for select DJs, but I mean, you know, on a local level.
Well, I think they still have Billboard reporters.
They do.
Okay, and there's at the time there was 100 of those across the country, including Alaska and Hawaii.
Yeah.
So when I was lucky enough to be honored with that extra job. Yeah. But, you know, and once you got
that... But it gave you influence, though.
Oh, yeah. I mean, just having that moniker, Billboard Reporter, cuts you out from the other, you know, others. And you would get, you know, remixes of mixes that would never, ever come out, you know. So you had the advantage that people would have to come there just to hear that extra minute or two on DiscoNet or Hot Tracks, because they were very strict also. To get on DiscoNet, you had to be brought in to see Mike Wilkinson, the owner, by some other DJ that had a membership. Yeah. You know, they just didn't say, "Oh, here, nice for you."
And for anybody watching, DiscoNet and Hot Tracks, I think we've covered this before, but they're remix services.
Yes, exactly.
Remix records.
DiscoNet was the first one, I believe, yes.
And they had a stable of DJs and remixers who would do the edits for them.
New York DJs that would remix them.
Yeah.
And, and they would put imports that were even hard to get in the States on DiscoNet. You know, sometimes it was crap, and sometimes stuff that you just couldn't use, but other DJs could. Yeah. You know, and then once in a while you'd get those fabulous things like Lay All Your Love on Me by ABBA, or the 13-minute of Viola Wills, If You Could Read My Mind.
By
and
Peter Struve, right?
Yeah. And, whenever that went on from note 1, you could just do whatever you wanted for 13 minutes, Because that's what somebody told me in Ptown before. He said, do you have DiscoNet? And I said, no. Oh, Mary, you've got to get it. The whole side, you never know what's going to happen, girlfriend. You might have to take a shit or whatever, and you can put something on. And I said, that's true, because,
attention spans were a little different then, though, too. I mean, a 13-minute, If You Could Read My Mind, people would stay for that.
Yes, they would, because they just loved it so much.
Well, you mean also it was a fabulous arrangement and everything else, sure.
Yeah.
It's funny, Relight My Fire, you were talking about it earlier, and I played it again this past Saturday, and I pretty much play it every time I play an old T or something, because it's like probably one of my all-time favorite records.
I think that's the number one.
Do you? I think it might be too.
I do.
The way it's arranged. I mean, there's no vocal for the first 3 minutes, maybe.
Yeah, beyond.
And all that arrangement's just fantastic. And then he comes in and sings, and then Lolita Holloway comes in later.
Forget it. Front and center in your face. Walk on through the night. I mean, it's like, how can you not relate to that? It's just so overwhelming.
Yeah.
And it's just 9 minutes long.
Yeah.
And unless you do the progressive instrumental. But, no. So I think so. It just has so much energy in it.
And it changes all the time.
Yes. And that's one of the things that we love about disco music, is the changes, how it just goes from that skid to that. It keeps you interested, so while you're on the dance floor, that next thing comes in to take your mind off into the next...
As opposed to now, where a lot of things feel a little bit repetitive.
Well,
there's not as much texture.
I still make CDs. I have a studio at home, and I make CDs of the music today, and it will go into a loop, and Philip will bang on the dashboard, because the only time he'll listen to them is when we're in the car. And he'll go, bang, the record's stuck, and I have to go, oh, shut up, you bitch.
Well, I mean, there's a certain, repetitiveness has its place in dance music.
True.
It's a trance kind of state where sometimes repetitiveness is okay.
But if it's not right, it's annoying.
It's boring.
Yeah. So,
So now, this is 79, 80, new wave records start coming out, but you're mostly playing disco, obviously, up until then.
Right. The Saint wasn't even open yet.
Right.
Okay. So, we were playing, and like I said, 79 was the year. There was just so many, fabulous records that came out. You just could go on and on and on, and everybody loved it. And everybody loved dancing at that point, and even though what happened to it with the straight world, the gays didn't care about any of that. This was our music to begin with. Fuck you, we never wanted you to know about it anyway. Because that's how we felt.
Right.
And, so 79 was a very good year, and I was down in Provincetown, that same year, during the summer, and they wanted to have a final vinyl party. That's what they called it, And it was all descendants of John Waters and Divine, the whole tribe of those people. They always rented North Truro and Ptown, and they would go to the various bars and hang out, and they would stay there for the whole summer. They'd come up from Maryland, So I met this guy, Tony King, and Cookie Mueller from Pink Flamingos and other movies, and another girl that had this leather jacket on and a butch do like that. And they brought in a whole bunch of records, and Tony King brought 2 45s of Jet Boy, Jet Girl from Australia. And it was the first time I ever heard of this record.
Right.
And he gave them to me. He says, I'm sorry, but I have to take them back. He said, but if you want to record it, blah, blah, blah. And all we had was cassettes and reel-to-reels. There was no CDs or anything. Because, we had cassettes, but, that was kind of hard to fumble with. So he gave me that, and then I did the party. And, of course, I had gotten some records in the pool, the B-52s, and I liked some of the music. I bought it on my own, but I never dared to play it, And, of course, before disco, I was quite a rock person. I wanted to be Mick Jagger when I grew up. As a in high school.
Right.
So rock music I was very into, and I used to listen to it during the day still too, before, and then go in and play the disco stuff at night, And when I started getting that music, and we were down in Ptown, and they wanted to put Motown oldies with a whole variety of non-disco music, and this new wave crazy music with the 200 beat per minute thing, and I just pulled it together, with their advice and whatever, and then Cookie came in the night of the party, and she came in and she said, would you like some MDA? She had a list, I said, okay, I'll have some. She pulled out a baggie, and it must have been like I mean, you know, and a spoon, like, you know, the big spoon in the kitchen. And she goes like, "Where's your drink?" And I said, "Honey, not that much, all right?" And I mean, I got really, well, it worked anyways. And the last song of the night was Old Cape Cod. I found 45 in there by Patty Page. It was sitting in the booth from God knows whose drag show. And that was the last song of the night. But I remember playing Dusty Springfield, I Only Want to Be With You, and Jet Boy, Jet Girl was like 20 minutes before the last song. And I mean, by the time, you know, everybody had heard He Gives Me Head, 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 and, you know, Take You Around the World, I mean, everybody just knew it. And I mean, the floor was so packed. And everybody was just so, you know, out there. It was just really quite a successful party.
So Jet Boy, Jet Girl is like a key record for you?
For me, yeah.
Yeah.
It was like, that was the record that said, it's all right to do this.
Yeah.
You know? And then I put it on a tape, you know, and I brought it back to Buddy's, and I was still, you know, a little fearful of it. But I used to go down to this bar. This was before the Saint opened. There was a bar called Sticks down there on 39th on the east side. And it was like a carbon copy of Buddy's with the neon and everything. So I was waiting in line to get in there, you know, and all of a sudden I heard Rock Lobster coming out of there, you know, and, you know, they played the disco nets and the disco stuff, you know, it was a good DJ playing there. And that was the first time I heard it, and I was waiting in line, and I said, well, if they're doing it, you know. So I went back, and the first was Planet Clear. It was 140 beats a minute, and you could blend it right out of Your Love by Lime perfectly at the break.
Right.
And you could do a nice thing, and then all of a sudden it would just go into that, and Michael Hall would do the strobe light, and everybody would be trapped on the dance floor. And they became, you know, and I would do like 5 or 6 songs in a row, do a little set, you know.
New waves.
Yeah. The Romantics, What I Like About You, and, you know, there were others.
So now that speed,